Welcome to Dolphin Dive Daily, your go-to spot for everything Miami Dolphins. If you bleed aqua and orange, hit that subscribe button and join the pod. The Miami Dolphins are in the middle of a storm, and the winds are getting stronger by the day. It's the kind of chaos that fans in South Florida have become all too familiar with. A promising start, high expectations, and then, somehow, the same old heartbreak creeping in before the season's end. But this time, it feels different. This time, the foundation itself might be shaking. When owner Stephen Ross stood before the cameras and announced that longtime general manager Chris Grier and the franchise had mutually agreed to part ways, you could feel the ripple effect spreading instantly across the NFL. Mutual, sure, but in the world of football, mutual is often just the polite way of saying someone was pushed out the door. And when the man who has been the architect of your roster for years is suddenly gone, you can't help but wonder if the next target is the man on the sidelines. Yes, we're talking about Mike McDaniel, the head coach whose quirky personality, offensive creativity, and cool demeanor once made him the poster boy for Miami's rebirth. But now, as reports swirl, the question is no longer if McDaniel can turn things around. It's whether he'll even survive to the end of the season. According to NFL insider Albert Breer, nothing is guaranteed for McDaniel anymore. Not the locker room. Not the next few weeks, not even Week 18. Breer wrote that McDaniel has a chance to prove himself, while Ross and team president Tom Garfinkel try to chart the next phase of the franchise. But make no mistake, that's not a vote of confidence. That's a lifeline being offered to a man whose grip is already slipping. Because in the NFL, when the general manager gets shown the door, the head coach is usually next in line. It's almost like clockwork. A new head of football operations will arrive, bringing in their own people, their own system, their own ideas, and often their own coach. And unless McDaniel somehow rallies this broken team, unless he finds a way to stop the bleeding and restore some pride to the Dolphins' locker room, his time in Miami could be running out fast. Let's rewind a bit. Remember when Mike McDaniel was hired? He was supposed to be the next great offensive mind, the guy who could take Tua Tagovailoa and turn him into the franchise quarterback Miami had been searching for since the days of Dan Marino. The vibes were immaculate. The energy was fresh. Players loved him, fans adored him, and the media couldn't get enough of his witty press conferences and unorthodox personality. But as we've seen time and time again in this league, charm and creativity only take you so far. Winning is the only currency that matters. And right now, McDaniel isn't cashing any checks. After Thursday night's humiliating 28-6 loss to the Baltimore Ravens, the Dolphins fell to a miserable 2-7 on the season. That's not just underachieving, that's collapsing. For a team that was built to compete in the AFC East, that's an indictment of leadership from top to bottom. Let's be real, this Dolphins team doesn't just look bad. It looks lost. The offense that was supposed to be explosive has turned predictable. The defense that was supposed to be aggressive has become undisciplined. The locker room, which once rallied around McDaniel's open, player-friendly approach, now feels like it's starting to fracture. And it's not just about wins and losses anymore. It's about culture, identity, and accountability. When a team starts tuning out its coach, when players stop responding, that's when ownership steps in. That's when you start seeing mutual partings and organizational shifts. Now, with Chris Grier gone, the power dynamics in Miami are shifting in a major way. Stephen Ross is 84 years old. He's been the owner of this team for 18 seasons. And in all that time, he has never, not once, won a playoff game. Think about that for a second. 18 seasons of disappointment. 18 years of new coaches, new systems, new promises. The last time the Miami Dolphins won a playoff game was in the year 2000, under Dave Wannstedt. That was back when Tom Brady was just getting started in New England. 2 decades. That's the longest active playoff win drought in the entire NFL. And when you've been chasing relevance for that long, patience becomes a luxury you can't afford. So when Albert Breer suggests that Ross could make another big move during the team's Week 12 bye, maybe even firing McDaniel, it doesn't sound crazy. It sounds like a man who's finally had enough. After all, what's left to lose? The Dolphins are already selling off assets. On Monday, the team traded pass rusher Jaelan Phillips to the Philadelphia Eagles for a 2026 third-round pick. That's not a move made by a team fighting for a playoff spot. That's a signal. That's the white flag being raised. That's an owner saying, "We're done pretending." And once that happens, the next logical step is a coaching change. Because if you're going to rebuild, again, you might as well do it from the ground up. The upcoming stretch won't make things easier. Miami is set to host the Buffalo Bills, who are sitting comfortably at 6-2 and playing with purpose. Odds makers at ESPN BET have the Dolphins as 8.5-point home underdogs. That's a staggering number, especially for a team that was supposed to be a contender not too long ago. After that, the Dolphins head to Madrid for a Week 11 showdown with the Washington Commanders, another struggling franchise, but one that will be hungry to prove something on an international stage. Then comes the bye week. And if the Dolphins head into that break sitting at 2-9 or 3-8, with a fractured roster and a restless fan base, would anyone really be surprised if McDaniel doesn't make it to Week 13? The truth is, McDaniel's biggest problem might not even be the losses, it's the perception. Around the league, the narrative is starting to shift. The offensive genius label has lost its shine. Opponents have figured out his tendencies, his schemes, his reliance on rhythm and timing. When things go right, his offense looks unstoppable. But when defenses disrupt that rhythm, the Dolphins look completely unprepared. There's no plan B, no adaptability. And that's where great coaches separate themselves. Look at guys like Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan. They evolve. They anticipate. McDaniel, for all his brilliance, still seems stuck in his own system. And let's not ignore the elephant in the room, Tua Tagovailoa. The quarterback once heralded as the perfect fit for McDaniel's system now looks uncertain, inconsistent, and overwhelmed. His timing is off, his reads are slow, and his confidence seems to waver with every hit he takes. At some point, that reflects on coaching. McDaniel was brought in specifically to maximize Tua's strengths, the quick decisions, the accuracy, the rhythm passing game. But lately, that rhythm has vanished, replaced by hesitation and frustration. If McDaniel can't even get his quarterback right, what's left to justify keeping him around? Now, don't get me wrong, McDaniel isn't a bad coach. He's smart, innovative, and well-liked. He's got a bright future in the NFL. But sometimes, the right coach in the wrong situation is just as doomed as the wrong coach in any situation. The Dolphins are a franchise desperate for results, and desperation has a way of erasing patience. Stephen Ross doesn't want another rebuild that takes 5 years. He wants something now. He wants the Dolphins to matter again. And as much as he might admire McDaniel's creativity, admiration doesn't win games. So what happens next? If the Dolphins somehow pull off a miracle win against Buffalo or find a way to dominate Washington and Madrid, McDaniel buys himself more time. The locker room settles down, the headlines cool off, and maybe Ross gives him the rest of the year to prove he can right the ship. But if the downward spiral continues, if the effort drops, if the players look checked out, that Week 12 bye could be the breaking point. A clean slate, a symbolic reset. Fire the coach, announce the new direction, and give the fans something, anything, to believe in again. At this point, Mike McDaniel's future in Miami feels like it's hanging by a thread. And every bad performance, every embarrassing loss, every headline about dysfunction pulls that thread a little tighter. He's coaching not just for his job, but for his reputation. Because once you lose the trust of the locker room, once ownership starts making moves above your head, it's only a matter of time before you're the next one out. The Miami Dolphins are standing at a crossroads yet again. Another season slipping away, another rebuild looming on the horizon. And the man who was once seen as their savior might soon be another name added to the long, painful list of what could have been. In the end, the NFL doesn't care about your potential, your charisma, or your clever play designs. It cares about results. And as the Dolphins stumble toward another lost season, Mike McDaniel's clock is ticking louder than ever. Whether he survives past the bye week, past the season, or even past the next 2 games, that's the story now. The Dolphins have a decision to make, and soon enough, we'll find out just how much longer the McDaniel experiment will last in Miami. Still with us? Then show some love. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments. What's your take on the Fins this week? It's official, folks. The NFL landscape is shaking yet again as one of the league's most talked about defensive ends, Bradley CHUBB, has officially been traded to the Miami Dolphins. Yes, you heard that right. After weeks, if not months, of speculation, whispers, and what felt like endless hot takes on sports radio. The deal has finally gone through, and CHUBB is heading to the Sunshine State. Now, let's not underestimate the implications of this move because, believe me, this isn't just another mid-season shuffle. This is the kind of trade that can redefine a franchise, shake the balance of power in a division, and make rival fans nervously check their schedules twice. The Dolphins, a team that's been hungry to climb out of mediocrity and assert themselves as serious contenders, are now signaling, loud and clear, that they're ready to go all in. Rumors first began circulating a few weeks ago, with insiders hinting that the Dolphins were quietly orchestrating a deal that could shake the AFC. The chatter initially seemed almost too good to be true, with analysts debating whether Miami had the assets to pull it off, whether CHUBB would even be willing to make the move, and how the coaching staff would integrate such a high-profile player into their defensive schemes. There were endless scenarios tossed around in the media: trade packages, draft pick swaps, player exchanges, but the truth was, nobody outside the front offices knew the final outcome. And now, with the ink officially dry, we can start connecting the dots. The Dolphins haven't just added a talented pass rusher. They've added a player capable of changing the dynamics of every single game he plays in. For a defense that's been criticized for inconsistency and a lack of dominance at critical moments, CHUBB could be the missing piece that finally turns the tide. Speculation about the motivations behind the trade has been rampant. Some say this move is part of a full-blown rebuilding strategy, a recalibration that goes beyond CHUBB and touches almost every level of the organization. The Dolphins, under the radar for years in terms of blockbuster trades, are clearly signaling that they intend to compete at the highest level, and they're not afraid to spend big or make bold moves to get there. The trade also raises questions about the future of other players on the roster. Will the presence of CHUBB push younger defensive talents to new heights, or will it create tension among veterans who feel their roles might be diminished? Rumor has it that internal discussions about salary cap management, long-term contracts, and leadership dynamics have been heating up behind closed doors. This is the kind of trade that doesn't just impact the field. It ripples through the locker room, the front office, and even the fan base, creating a whirlwind of excitement, anxiety, and endless speculation. On the other side of the coin, the team that traded CHUBB away isn't exactly left in the dust. The move hints at a strategic pivot, one that some sources are calling a rebuild with purpose. There's talk that the team acquired multiple draft picks and younger players in exchange, signaling an intent to revamp and retool for long-term success rather than immediate glory. Critics argue that letting go of a star player like CHUBB could backfire if the rebuild doesn't pan out. But insiders suggest the front office has a calculated plan, a roadmap designed to maximize both current competitiveness and future potential. The chatter surrounding these kinds of trades often includes endless what-ifs, scenarios that range from championship dreams to disastrous regressions, and this trade is no different. The league's pundits are divided, some hailing it as a masterstroke of foresight, others labeling it a high-risk gamble that could haunt the team for years. Miami, on the other hand, is in a unique position. The Dolphins have been quietly building a roster that has flashes of brilliance, but has struggled with consistency. Adding Bradley CHUBB injects not just talent, but also an aura of intimidation. His presence on the defensive line can alter the game plan of every opposing quarterback, forcing teams to rethink blocking schemes, pass protection, and even their offensive tempo. Fans have already started buzzing on social media, speculating about the first games he'll play in teal and orange, imagining the matchups against division rivals, and debating just how many sacks he'll accumulate in his inaugural season with the Dolphins. The rumor mill is alive and well, and the narrative practically writes itself. CHUBB arrives, the defense rises, and suddenly, Miami is not just a team to watch, they're a team to fear. The hype, of course, will need to be tempered with reality, but in a league where momentum and morale matter as much as raw talent, this move alone has already created a psychological edge for the Dolphins. Meanwhile, pundits are dissecting the finer details of CHUBB's contract, his injury history, and how he fits into Miami's defensive schemes. Some analysts are projecting a scenario where he becomes the centerpiece of a pass rush that could rival some of the best in the league, while others caution that integrating a player of CHUBB's caliber into a new system midstream is never seamless. There's also chatter about how his arrival might affect the locker room culture, whether younger players will step up to match his intensity or whether adjustments will need to be made to ensure chemistry isn't disrupted. Sports media outlets are already running endless hypothetical situations. What if CHUBB faces his former team? What if he dominates in primetime games? What does this mean for playoff seeding? Every rumor, every analysis, every hot take seems to spiral into dozens of more questions, and that's exactly the kind of buzz that fuels off-season intrigue. Beyond the immediate implications, there's a larger story here about ambition, strategy, and the shifting power dynamics in the NFL. The Dolphins aren't just making a trade. They're sending a message to the rest of the league. We're rebuilding, but we're doing it on our terms. They're willing to make bold, headline-grabbing moves, and they're positioning themselves as serious players in a division that's becoming increasingly competitive. Fans of other teams are watching nervously, analysts are sharpening their pencils, and the rumor mill isn't going to slow down anytime soon. CHUBB's arrival could be the catalyst for an entirely new era in Miami football, one where expectations are higher, pressure is greater, and every game carries the weight of what this trade represents. And let's be honest, rumors about even bigger moves are already circulating. Some insiders suggest that the Dolphins front office might not stop here, that this is just the first in a series of strategic gambles designed to build a contender in record time. So here we are, standing on the precipice of a new chapter in NFL drama, with Bradley Chubb in teal and orange, and the Dolphins poised for a rebuild that could redefine the franchise. The excitement, the anxiety, the speculation, it's all part of the game, and the rumor mill is just getting started. Over the next few weeks, we'll see how this trade plays out on the field, how it reshapes locker room dynamics, and how rival teams respond. One thing is certain, Bradley Chubb in Miami is not just a trade, it's a statement. And in a league where statements matter as much as results, the Dolphins just made one that everyone will be talking about for a long time. Fans, analysts, and rival teams alike are now waiting with bated breath to see if this bold move pays off, or if it sparks yet another chapter of speculation, drama, and off-field maneuvering that the NFL thrives on. One thing's for sure, the buzz is real, the rumors are flying, and the story of Bradley Chubb in Miami is only just beginning. That's a wrap for today's dive. If you're loving the content, share it with a fellow Dolphins fan, hit subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a splash. Fins up.